Very good morning to all our viewers outside there. Welcome to another edition of The Other Perspective, brought to you by Alliance Finance Monitoring, a political finance watchdog. The Other Perspective runs every Wednesday from 11 a.m. to 12 midday East African time. Kindly, I would like to implore all of you to subscribe to all our social media platforms. That is on Facebook, we are ACFIM on Twitter, we are ACFIM on YouTube channel, we are ACFIM Uganda. Kindly hit on that subscription button of YouTube as we proceed. So today we are going to be looking at the haphazard salary enhancement for civil servants in Uganda and its implication on public service delivery. My name is Abel Esero and I'm going to be your host today. Before we proceed, I would like to give you a background on why we have chosen to discuss about this topic. Currently, the Uganda Local Government Workers Union has issued a notice of industrial action starting at midnight tonight, which is 6th of July 2022. The local government staff are demanding that government implements the collective bargaining agreement that was signed in 2018. By this agreement, the salary of the highest paid local government official, that is the chief administrative officer, will be increased from the current rate of Uganda shillings 2.3 million, which is equivalent to 617 US dollars, to Uganda shillings 15 million, which is an equivalent to 4,024 US dollars. While the salary of the lowest paid staff at the local government, which is currently the attendants, will be increased from the current rate of Uganda shillings 187,000, which is equivalent to 50 US dollars, to Uganda shillings 1.7 million. That's an equivalent of 456 US dollars. We all know that local governments are the special purpose vehicles for service delivery in Uganda. In other words, it is at the local government level that the rubber touches the ground, that any industrial action at this level would significantly affect the ordinary citizen on the ground. This industrial action comes in a quick succession to the one of the teachers that ended on Monday, 4th July 2022, after the teachers met the president of Uganda, that's Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. The cause for the industrial action was still salaries, particularly after government haphazardly increased the salary of science teachers in secondary schools from Uganda shillings 1.4 million, which is equivalent to 375 US dollars, to Uganda shillings 4 million, an equivalent of 1,081 US dollars per month. Conversely, there is looming industrial action from public universities, non-teaching staff, executives forum. It remains to be seen whether or not the medical interns and midwives were also sorted. The president tweeted on Monday, and I quote, "We have a strategy and no one should disrupt us. We are aware of these issues and we are committed to handling them. Therefore, my advice to the teachers is that they should go back and teach." This and much more we shall be discussing today on The Other Perspective. And with me are three gallant guests who are going to be giving us their insights on the haphazard salary enhancement for civil servants and its implication on public service delivery in Uganda. The first is Mr. Henry Muguzi, who is an anti-corruption activist and also a governance expert. So he's going to give us his clue and his expertise on the areas of governance, on whether how Uganda's public service is currently being managed is effective and is important for the effective public service delivery to the ordinary citizens. And also, Henry, you're welcome.
Thank you, Abel. A pleasure for me to be here.
And we shall also be joined by Priska Wanyenya, who is a journalist who reports from the Parliament of Uganda. And we know that budgets are always appropriated from the August House. So you'll also have to tell us what is cooking up, what are the MPs cooking from that side, because we know that they are trying to have discussions on these very matters. So you'll also help us digest what are some of the things that are coming from the August House. You're welcome, Priska.
Thanks so much, Abel.
And lastly, we shall have Mr. Felix Kafuma, who is an anti-corruption activist, but also a governance expert. He will also be joining us and taking us through some of the things government should do and the teachers should also do, and also all those other civil servants who are in the public service. Felix, you are welcome.
Thank you so much, Abel. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'll dive straight away to you, Henry, and also the other guests, but I will start with you, Henry. What is your take on the current wave of industrial actions in the public service?
Thank you, Abel. Of course, this must be as concerning to me as it should be to every Ugandan or anybody that wishes Uganda well. Because what we have seen in the recent past is an escalation in the industrial action. We don't know for now and for sure what was agreed between the president and the teachers who had laid their tools for almost 3 weeks. We don't know the morale they have, but also when the local governments are promising of this looming industrial action that starts at midnight tonight, that of course should be a worry, because one of the reasons why we went down the path of local government was to make sure services reach the people. And like you rightly put it, local governments were established as a special purpose vehicle for service delivery in Uganda. Most of those services are supervised by, but also implemented by through local governments. If you talk about schools, health, medical, all these are security, local governments. Now, if there is industrial action, only God knows what will happen, because you imagine you've gone to the district and the officials are not there, the sub-county officials are not there, everything gets to be stuck. The service providers need to be paid. They need paperwork that is needed to, deliver services, and there's nobody to process this paperwork. As a matter of fact, the whole administration unit is crippled, and of course, with the tools being laid down, there's nobody to supervise. Remember, local government officials are the ones that are supposed to execute the administrative function. So you have a situation where you have a sheep without a shepherd, and therefore we don't know what will happen. And this is also unprecedented. But the wave of this action is telling in terms of how we are managing this country, because we seem to see a domino of these actions, and the inherent factor is that civil servants are not well paid, and this is a factor we have known for many years, that the civil servants should be well remunerated, but also with the current worsening economic situation, the cost of living is going high up. As a matter of fact, many people are even failing to find transport to get to places of work. Those that used to drive have decided to park their vehicles. So the situation is dire, and of course then this industrial action is worrying, and most worrying is the knowledge that there is also other forms of industrial action looming, and we don't know who else is going to join in the industrial action. Back to you, Abel.
Thank you, Henry. I want now to bring Priska. You sit at Parliament, and these waves of industrial actions have been so many, and MPs contribute partly to these waves because they are the ones who appropriate mostly these budgets. So, what is your take on these current waves of industrial action, and what implication do they have on the ordinary citizens?
Thanks so much, Abel. And when I remember when the permanent secretary to the Ministry of Public Service issued that warning to the teachers that she would strike them off the payrolls if they refuse to return back to class. And the MPs that I spoke to reacted angrily to the proposal, and there were press conferences held to warn government against the move. But I partly blame the parliament for the mess, because the proposal to increase the salary of scientists has been around parliament, I think, for the past 5 years. Even it started in the 10th parliament, and parliament resisted it. So this time around, what Ministry of Finance did was to bring the proposal in another name, calling it enhancement of salaries for scientists. So the MPs, I would say they got hoodwinked, or they knew about the move and they approved it. So it kind of shocked me when they reacted angrily to the threats by government and the strike, because I mean, you're the people who approved this money, the 495 billion that Kasaija announced on salary enhancement. And to me, I looked at them as people who are hypocrites. And I remember during the press conference, one of the journalists asked them, "You are the people who approve this money, so why are you coming to lament before us?" And the teacher and the MP said, for them, the proposal came from the executive, and their work was to deal with the approval. They are not the ones who came up with the budget. That was the excuse they gave. But and so now when the issue backfires, and you remember this the strike happened at the time, some of them were in the constituencies supervising PDM. And I remember yesterday when Cecilia Guald said that they faced uncomfortable time during their recess in the constituencies, because even when they were telling people to embrace the parish development model, all the questions were lying on when are our kids going back to school. So even the motive as to why they went to the constituency for the recess was not achieved, because there was something more underlying. There was a bigger crisis than that had taken them. And to me, I was like, well, they deserved that uncomfortable, because for them, they are simply lamenting about being uncomfortable, but the teachers, their livelihood is at stake. So, and it gave me a good feeling, because I know that for now Ugandans have woken up and they are now holding their leaders accountable. So as and you know, now the issue has the speaker also communicated yesterday, telling the teachers to go back to class. She was like, she understands how they feel. I'm always hesitant towards using the line of "I understand how you feel," because if you've not been a teacher yourself, you can really not understand the plight. As I'm speaking as someone who has had a mother who is a teacher, and you know, you go to school and you literally, we always tell her that we basically studied on loans from Centenary Bank, because it was a loan after loan. So, and as someone who has been there, lived that life, I cannot say that I may understand what my mom went through, but I cannot feel what she felt. So for you, an accountant, and you are a speaker who has recently acquired cars that are worth 2.1 billion shillings, you're telling a teacher who is receiving about 300,000 that you understand, and yet you are the same person who was accused of paying MPs about 5 million shillings for voting you. So you want to tell people that you understand someone who is living loan after loan, who is earning 300,000. It is kind of disturbing, that assumption. You'd rather use another word than you feel what they feel, because those are two different worlds apart. So now they are saying that they are going to make sure the government fulfills its pledge as to a discussion. But I can't recall whether it's Henry or Abel who said that we are not so sure of what the two parties agreed upon, the president and the UNATU, when they met in Kololo. So none has come out to explain, and I think it's a shortfall on their part not to kind of explain, because when you are announcing you announce the strike, then if you're calling it off, I think you owe the public, because we are also stakeholders in this arrangement. So the parliament says that they are going to make sure that if government holds government accountable to fulfill the pledges, and I'm not so sure how they are going to. Perhaps they are going to. I know the Prime Minister will issue the statement. Probably that is when we shall understand what the two parties agreed upon, because right now it's like we are in the darkness, all of us.
Thank you, Priska. Felix, you've just heard Henry and Priska have shared their take on the current wave of industrial actions in the public service. I would also like to hear from you, but also embed the elemental. If the demands of all striking public servants are met, as they may, how feasible is it within the current budget resource envelope of Uganda?
Thank you so much, Abel. Very interesting discussions, and very important as well. Quickly, let me start by having a quick comment on the current state of industrial actions. And remember, we've been here before. I think for the last 5 years, almost many areas, medical workers, teachers at tertiary institutions, secondary teachers, across board midwives have been engaging in industrial action one after the other, and usually it ends with the groups that are striking meeting the head of state. Remember, we have what we call line ministries or responsible ministries for those different public servants that are striking, whether it's health workers or whether it's medics or whether it's teachers. They all fall under separate ministries. But every time they strike, it's a follow-up on the previous strike. That's the first thing you must observe. It's never a new strike. It's a follow-up of a previous strike because of unresolved issues. So we have a spate of continuous strikes that have come to unfortunately characterize this regime. But also, another observation is that it only takes the head of state to convince them to get back to office and work. There are a number of questions that, for me, that linger. One, because that speaks to the broader issues of how do we manage our public affairs, the public affair management aspects. And I've asked myself 3 questions. Do we manage by crisis? Do we manage by impulse? Or do we manage by deception? Or a combination of the 3? Because now, even the current strike for teachers, which is on hold now, which has been suspended, it took the head of state to intervene. Like Henry said, we don't know exactly what was the ingredients of the negotiations for the teachers to suspend their industrial action. But I'm so sure, mark my word, we may be back here again when the issues they discussed and they agreed and resolved in that meeting with the head of state are still pending and not resolved. Now we have local government, and every strike that comes through, or that every national action that we see coming through, refers to a previous engagement where unresolved issues were discussed and are still pending to date. So, but what does that mean? I think it means, in all honesty, government has not demonstrated its commitment to deal with the problem of harmonizing public service salary structure. There was a process which was undertaken, granted by the Public Service Commission, but you see that government is not taking this serious and prefers to deal with these issues as they come, piecemeal, not holistically. So then we are in that state, which I call management by either crisis or impulse or deception or a combination of the three. The issue of whether this is realistic, how feasible is it, especially the demands, because look, if indeed local governments, for example, local government workers decide to put down their tools or follow through their threat, if you look at how big the local government structure is, and to enforce that kind of wage demand, the new wage demand that they are presenting as the basis for their industrial action, it is practically impossible. Remember, our resource envelope is not that so elastic. We have a budget, and by the way, for the last 3 years running, we've been having a budget that has been oscillating between 43 to 47 million. Sorry, 43 to 47 trillion. So and that budget is a budget also, which on many occasions the revenue collections are falling short. So it's a budget financed by heavily external and internal borrowing. So if this is to be actualized vis-a-vis our resource envelope, you are literally telling us that you are going to go back and borrow. Already we are complaining about our debt burden. So you are going now to stretch our debt burden to accommodate these interests of a wage structure that is very untenable and unsustainable. Yet there are some practical solutions that could be handled. So to answer your question straight away, it's not tenable, it's not feasible. I foresee a situation where all these different groups that are striking will continue to strike. They are promised, deal with the few other leaders. They keep them in hope. They don't address them. I don't see government holistically handling this issue because it has budget implications, but it also has budget discipline. It also has political will. And I don't know whether those three ingredients that I'm discussing right now are at play in the decisions that are being taken. Back to you, Adam.
Thank you. Henry, you've just been listening to Felix, and we all know that currently only government has about 7 trillion for wages, for the wage bill. And if so happens that they tend to meet all the demands of these striking teachers, do you think this won't have an issue on the current budget, and what implication will that have now on the other side of our service delivery? And also, I would like you to respond to there's a question which everyone lingers almost on everyone's head. For the longest time, it has been argued that one of the causes of corruption, of endemic corruption within the public service, is poor pay. Do you think with the current increment, anything can be addressed in the area of corruption? So I would like you to respond to those questions.
Thank you very much, Felix. If you look at the numbers being proposed by the local government staff, where the cows pay, I think would skyrocket up to 15 million per month, and then the lowest paid one would be around 1.5 million. That would be office attendant. So I was looking at the percentages. Of course, I have noticed here that the biggest percentage of local government budgets goes in the biggest percentage of the local government wage bill is accounted for by primary school teachers at 42.4%, followed by health workers at at 20.58%, and in third place is secondary school teachers at 17.72%. So in total, teachers of primary schools and teachers of secondary school account for 60% of the total wage bill at local government level. Now, the officials that are promising this industry action, their wage bill accounts for only 9.4%. So at that level, you can say, okay, maybe, just maybe we can accommodate the 9 point, because the percentage is not so big, 9.4%. But that would mean that if you succumbed, if you did grant the wish of the local government staff, then the public servants in other government ministries, departments, and agencies are also going to demand that you do the same. Remember, what is good for the goose is also good for the gander. And therefore, that is likely to push our budget, our wage bill to beyond 10 or 11 trillion. That might then have to account for about 15% of the national budget. Now, at that level, when you have almost a quarter of the national budget going on the wage bill, it gets into the threshold of what is not sustainable. Because you remember, then you have to do debt servicing at 15 trillion. Then you have to do the current expenditure, the payment of rent, of utilities, of the things you need to run the offices. Then you discover that almost 80% of the national budget is going into this recurrent spending. Then you cannot develop a country like that. So it is not sustainable. I think what has to happen is that, and Felix alluded to this, why is it that everything is boiling down to the president? We have learned as students of management that one of the basic tenets of a good manager is to delegate. Delegation is a key principle in management. You cannot be the president who is solving everything. Why is it that every industrial action cannot come to a resolution, never mind what kind of resolution it is, whether it is cajoling, because we don't know whether these young men and women were cajoled or agreed to certain terms. But why does it end with the president? What happened with the delegation? Excuse me. So I think that would be an issue of concern. I'm not sure our budget as of now can accommodate this. Maybe we pray and pray hard that the revenues from oil exploration come through faster than we think. Number two, the question of corruption, because it has been the argument that the reason corruption is endemic within the public services is because of poor pay. I think corruption may not necessarily cease by mere enhancement of salaries, because it is now a way of life. The greed that has been embedded and ingrained in the minds of these men and women who occupy public service, I want to argue that will continue to be there. If you look at departments where you have one of the most highest paid staff, Office of the Auditor General, how are they auditing? They still charge money for good statements in audit. I do know my colleagues in government tell me the Auditor General comes and says, look, guys, when the Auditor General is coming, they have to collect monies. We see we shall have to give the Auditor General about 50 million. Can your department, 100 million, can your department part with 50? Department so and so part with 20. So we make a package of 20 or 100 million. So you see now, but also URA has corruption ceased. UNRA has corruption ceased. What about in Parliament? One of the highest paid public officials, even when they are going to vote on EALA, they want to be paid. They want to vote on the speaker, they want to be paid. They want to legislate on something, they want to be paid. So corruption may not necessarily cease by virtue on the stroke of enhancement of salaries of these men and women. Why? Because it has become a way of life. It is so deeply ingrained within these government officials. Back to you, Abel.
Thank you, Henry. We are going to go for a brief break, then we shall return with the next segment.